Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Will Everall, Assistant Vice President of Edge Solutions at AT&T Business. I have the privilege of leading you through our Accelerating Digital Transformation and Embracing Business Disruption session today. So to get started, just wanted to share a little about myself. So I have the privilege of leading product marketing and development for software-defined networking, network function virtualization, SD-WAN, and the really exciting topic of secure access service edge. A lot of attention on converging of security and SD-WAN. So a very hot topic, a lot of excitement in the market space, and very excited to talk about kind of what AT&T is doing respective to our efforts with VMware in this respective space. So to get started, just want to kind of level set, at least from an AT&T lens, what we see happening in the enterprise space, why it's relevant to broader transformation with SD-WAN, broader transformation with security. And a lot of it is centered around the pandemic. I think when you think about enterprise businesses, what's happening in this space right now, everyone's been impacted to some extent, whether that's interacting with your customers, whether that's products that you're needing, aspects from supply chain to distribution, whether that is how you're supporting your end employee base and ensuring that they're productive, whether they're in your office or from home or from anywhere on their device, or if that's even thinking about the broader applications that they're connecting into now that they're no longer in the office. How are those applications performing, and do we need to have a more distributed architecture to support them? So a lot of change, a lot of transformation, but I think it's in a lot of aspects, it's helped from pushing businesses to look creatively, look at different aspects to making changes that they normally wouldn't have considered if some of these situations haven't occurred. So when you think about some of the core foundations of those drivers, as I mentioned, kind of cloud transformation, moving applications from traditional data centers to multiple clouds and then heavily distributed clouds, that has been happening for a while. But I think, as I mentioned, with the pandemic, I've seen that become more accelerated. Even in industries that were fairly conservative in their cloud strategy have been moving that up in the priority list. When you think about the other aspect of that, so you've got your application environment, becoming heavily distributed. Now your endpoints from using mobile technology. So it's no longer just connecting to those applications from your mobile device. Now it's connecting those through maybe a fleet solution that you're tracking and monitoring. It could be just assets, high valuable assets that you're tracking. It could be sensors or even video cameras that you're digitally enabling through mobile or Wi-Fi or private cellular. So the endpoints that you're having to support across your enterprise network is becoming very expansive at the same time. Voice and UC, so communications as I'm no longer in the office, critical productivity measures of internal communication with end customers. Those are foundational to some of the key focus areas for businesses. And then with all that, right, so I've got my applications becoming distributed. I've got my endpoints becoming distributed. The security architecture that you're protecting all those with also has to change and evolve as well. So those are all, I think, very relevant. I think the pandemic has played a role in accelerating different aspects of those. And then when you kind of pivot to, what are the big, 10 different trends that enterprise businesses are looking at and spending initiatives and investments on over the next 12 to 24 months. And these are the top ones, and as I mentioned, I think the cloud component ties really well in there. So looking at their cloud strategy, thinking of ways to get those applications closer and closer to the end user or end device that's consuming that application. Right there underneath it, tie really well into that cloud component. So how do you have the network connectivity and security to support that heavily, distributed cloud model? So those go hand in hand. And then virtualization, so virtualized firewalls, virtual SD-WAN into those cloud endpoints also goes hand in hand with that broader trend and focus area for enterprise businesses. Then you look down, you've got Internet of Things, you've got mobile wireless solutions, you've got big data analytics, you've got machine learning and AI. So a lot of those is, connecting more digitally enabled endpoints. How do I make intelligence of that data? How do I take action? How do I automate that action? So those are all really important aspects. And you see SD-WAN in there as well. So SD-WAN being a foundational technology to really help with that secure visibility from the edge into those distributed cloud endpoints right now. That is the fabric of that network transformation, connecting it, making it smart, making it intelligent, making it agile. So a lot of big focus areas that tie directly back there. When you think about AT&T and our core assets, so we play really well in really all of these areas. And if you kind of keep them in that same kind of framework from the edge, the customer edge, the cloud, and then you've got the fabric that ties it all together in the middle, the network. So from an edge perspective, our portfolio of the LAN aspect. So there's a lot of transformation in LAN with software-defined LAN, Wi-Fi, using Wi-Fi not just for connecting in mobile devices, but digitally enabled sensors, could be cameras, could be robotics. And even with Wi-Fi, could be some limitations and challenges. It's a broad Wi-Fi area. There's high reliability requirements. I'm connecting hundreds of devices that have lots of throughput requirements. So you may be looking at private cellular or macro cellular to augment what you're doing with some of those digitally enabled endpoints. And you could also be looking at, edge compute capabilities to do local processing for low latency requirements to some of those aspects. All of this is right in a sweet spot for AT&T and our leadership in managed edge technologies, and our leadership in Wi-Fi and IoT and edge compute. So as you transition out of kind of that in-building functionality, you start moving more into the network aspect of it. So SD-WAN is, as I mentioned, really utilizing the network layer in a more efficient manner. So moving from traditional private networks of layer 2 Ethernet and MPLS to hybrid, making those hybrid with more of dedicated internet or shared internet, or wireless broadband is a great alternative to traditional broadband. And even with 5G, so, a lot of the broadband capabilities out there right now are LTE or LTE advanced, and, the power of what 5G is going to do to really provide another layer of access technologies that SD-WAN can leverage. So that provides that, like I mentioned, very intelligent routing security layer to provide that connectivity to whether it's your data center, whether it's your private cloud, or whether it's public cloud or SaaS applications distributed throughout the world. So that's the fabric of the core transformation happening. And then from an AT&T perspective, we've been a managed security service provider, a leader in this space for many years. And that kind of stitches together the fabric of that pervasive security fabric. So as my cloud is distributed, my endpoints are distributed, AT&T also can be looking at this holistically from endpoint security, securing it across the SD-WAN layer, providing that deep security into the cloud, and then also having the intelligence to feed that data into processing where are really those true threats across this broad set of potentially even multi-vendor ecosystem that you've built with this. So all of this end-to-end, AT&T has a very strong value proposition and ties really well into kind of what we're doing in the SD-WAN space. So taking a deeper look into SD-WAN specifically, when you think about business drivers and outcomes that customers are realizing as they deploy SD-WAN, these are the ones that stand out the most. So back to UC as a service, so voice, video, ensuring the performance of those critical applications. So voice, a very latency, packet loss sensitive application, video the same. You need a technology like SD-WAN, and specifically VMware specializes in their ability for brownout and link remediation. They've got a tremendous algorithm, which has been one of the key reasons why we've been focused in providing managed capabilities with their technology. So that's a great value aspect to what SD-WAN can deliver with those critical performance elements associated with UC as a service. When you think about WAN and the overall expenditure of WAN, as bandwidth needs become more and more intense, video chewing up more bandwidth, you've got to be very mindful about how you're using that connectivity. So SD-WAN provides a better utilization of either private networking or hybrid networking or public networking. And we've seen this shift. So we've seen this shift from just pure private to hybrid, where now we've got a combination of MPLS and broadband or dedicated internet or even wireless internet. And the SD-WAN can make intelligence, drive better utilization. Under sunny day conditions, a lot of your applications can go across a lower cost broadband. But in rainy day conditions, right, you've got that dedicated performance of the private networking that you can shift over to and do that dynamically without any interruption to that user experience. And then you move over to the kind of the last one, as I mentioned, SD-WAN being really the foundation for, ensuring you've got secure, high-performing cloud applications. So as I move from all my applications in that data center, now they're heavily distributed, SD-WAN can determine what's the best path. It can, in real time, profile that application. If it's a SaaS application that requires certain levels of performance, it can make that right determination, send it down that path. And even if there's issues on that link, in real time, it can either remediate or flip it to the other link for better performance. So it really provides that great experience as I'm moving away from kind of that traditional private hub and spoke network to this heavily distributed architecture. And then from a customer expectation perspective, we've seen some evolution. SD-WAN is not a new technology. It's really starting to become a very mature, consumed technology out in the enterprise space. So the evolutions of what customers are expecting from it have also changed. So edge to cloud, that functionality is really one of the foundational drivers. Back to what are enterprises really focused on right now? 46% had broad cloud strategy initiatives to think about better distribution. So SD-WAN really aligning well to help with that scalability and agility. Cost reduction. This was probably one of the more common drivers in the early views of SD-WAN. It's still an important one, but I don't think it's more of the foundation anymore. I think, as customers really start to understand the full value of SD-WAN, they're starting to realize it's much broader than just reducing my network costs. They're seeing how it provides better visibility, scalability, and security for cloud, which is foundational in their strategy. They're seeing how it is really important from broader control and flexibility in their network architecture. I can augment with a lot of different forms of access technologies and drive a lot of value from those access technologies. And I can have central control of that. So I can see my entire network. I can make configuration changes and deploy those across hundreds of endpoints simply through that orchestration. I've got deep reporting to understand where there are issues. Is it transport-related issues? Is it application-related issues? And then the last one, I think, this customers realize this transformation from traditional networking architecture to next-gen networking architecture is fairly complex. And having a trusted advisor that knows the pitfalls, knows how to navigate this technology, has deep expertise, not only in the SD-WAN aspect of it, but their underlay and how it's integrating in with their broader end-to-end environment, is foundational to success. So that's been some key learnings, and I think those continue to evolve from a customer side of this. As it relates to AT&T and VMware, we've had a long partnership. So we've embarked and managed SD-WAN roughly 5 years ago, and we did extensive evaluation. It's funny to think 5 years ago, who the players were in the SD-WAN has evolved quite a bit throughout that 5-year period. But VMware's technology, even in those early days of SD-WAN, was extremely impressive. Their algorithms around brownout, link remediation, the simplicity of the orchestration and deployment, very intuitive for a user and a managed service provider for AT&T to really provide capabilities around. So it was pretty easy for us to select them as kind of our leading managed SD-WAN offer out of the gate, and it's been extremely successful. So we've deployed thousands of customers. We've got tens of thousands of endpoints deployed domestically and globally. And we continue to work with VMware and think about what's next from an innovation perspective. Security, the logical one, a lot of work underway at looking at broader integration with VMware security capabilities. How do we tie network into their partner gateways and their cloud gateway environments? How do we take this technology and back to kind of that work from home? So no matter if I'm in the office or I'm at home, can I have that same level of experience even over consumer broadband, or augment consumer broadband with some form of mobile assets? Back to AT&T assets, we've got fiber assets, we've got mobile assets, using those in unique ways to add additional value either in branches or home or wherever you are. So there's a lot of evolution that we continue to work with VMware, thinking about their visibility. How do we take some of those capabilities with even ENI and infuse those into our day two support models to provide better proactive notification of changes that we can make either on our customer behalf or either recommend and make proactive recommendations on things that our customers can do to improve applications or policy management for their environment. So a lot of evolution. They've been a long-term partner, and there's a lot of great innovation that we're continuing to work with them on in this space. So back to kind of this networking and security, as we start to see this convergence happen, it's interesting to think about, the core pillars of what we refer to as secure access service edge and how those are starting to come together. So software-defined WAN, a very defined technology, well-known. Firewall, so moving, traditional firewall service from premise-based to cloud-based, very well-known security technology. Zero trust network access, and this is getting a lot of attention as businesses really start to evaluate their secure remote access and think about better ways to provide, access to the right applications, but better policy management around which applications users are connecting into, and a better, tighter understanding of how that's being done. Secure web gateway. This has been another technology that's been foundational as customers move to SD-WAN. They're thinking about secure internet offload and direct cloud connectivity. How do you do that but still have strong security policy management without hubbing all that through my traditional data center? So this is a lot of attention around secure web gateway. And then cloud access security broker. So deeper visibility into this heavily distributed cloud and SaaS environment that you're starting to deploy. That's going to be foundational, that you've got some aspect to monitor, control, and restrict, or either know when people are connecting into or pulling down certain data from those cloud environments. So this is kind of the broader framework. And as I mentioned, a lot of this is not new. And a lot of it businesses are solving for in multi-vendor environments right now. But I think, as you think about the potential and thinking about, bringing this all together in a single vendor integrated stack, there is value in that sense, from the central management, central visibility that you've got now over all these disparate technologies. And also the interoperability becomes more streamlined. So, we see as both a managed security service provider, a managed SD-WAN provider, providing the transport. As you look across those, and you look across those in a multi-vendor environment, there's a lot of complexities. And the interoperability, as I release new softwares on one, how does it impact how those are integrating with the other? So that's where we see, this move from multi-vendor to single vendor, also providing a more streamlined offer, because now it's a single vendor building out software across these respective areas, which will improve that interoperability and also help integrate the central management and visibility for these respective technologies. When you think about the drivers as it relates about SASE and why our business is interested in this kind of new framework. And it's pretty simple. I mean, when you think about the traditional environment of the small offices, the branches, the headquarters, how those are traditionally connecting in through a private network of MPLS and into that private data center. As those, and that works very well. It worked for, 10 plus years. That architecture was in place, even longer than that. But as those applications now kind of shift, I'm moving, my data center environment to private cloud instances, and some of those are moving to SaaS environments, some of it's moving to private cloud. This architecture of coming all the way through MPLS into that data center and then out to those applications becomes inefficient, and it becomes could jeopardize even performance issues around that, right? So then you've got the bottom layer there. I've got my small office that now is becoming merging with the consumer space and now becoming a home office of one. I've got on the other side of this, I've got mobile endpoints that were traditional corporate devices, and now those are becoming IoT enabled endpoints. They're becoming cameras and sensors and fleet solutions. So this architecture, and as they're connecting into no longer just my private data center, these public cloud and SaaS and private cloud environments, that connectivity in the middle needs to flex and adapt as well. And so does the security technologies that I'm using. So no longer having a centralized security stack in the data center, thinking of cloud solutions that no matter if I'm an IoT device or I'm a user in my headquarter location or I'm at my home office, the policy and how I'm connecting into those applications has the same management, structure, view, visibility, and architecture around it. So this is why this kind of morph around integration of SASE and networking is taking a lot of interest for enterprise businesses. It's why it's also a big focal point for managed service providers like AT&T as we look to provide additional value of helping customers transform not just the network layer, but the evolving cloud layer, the evolving endpoint layer, which ties back into kind of AT&T's kind of core foundational value to our businesses. And this journey isn't anything new. So, from an AT&T, SD-WAN and VMware partnership perspective, we've been, building SASE frameworks. Back to me earlier saying, when you look at those 5 pillars of what SASE is, a lot of it is not new. The single vendor aspect of it is building become new, but you can solve in that multi-vendor environment. So a lot of businesses are doing that right now, and we've been helping from the managed security aspect to the managed SD-WAN aspect. And when you look at this design, so with VMware in the lower left, we can provide managed SD-WAN on a traditional VMware device. We can provide it in the upper quadrant as a virtual function on a white box. We can service chain that with security services on that device, and we can do that at global scale. So we can do that either from appliances to the white box in 200 plus countries. And that gives us a lot of capabilities to support different requirements. That global scale is a real important one. When you think about having to support maintenance and break fix in tough to reach countries, having a robust device portfolio in a depot center could be specifically challenging for certain device models. So the white box gives us some different options to solve for that, being able to support multiple licenses on that specific white box. So having different combinations is a key in being able to support kind of that global scale. Doing a lot of work back to the point of mobile integration in with SD-WAN as another, secondary or primary access link with the technology. We're doing a lot of wireless broadband now integrated directly in with either the appliance or as an external modem that we manage and support for those rapid deployments, quick test and turn up, and a great alternative, like I said, traditional broadband, cable broadband, dedicated internet, and really to augment that with, dedicated or AVPN type of access technology. And then you kind of shift over back to kind of the SASE element that I was mentioning, cloud security. becoming a critical aspect to helping with, driving the moving away from that kind of premise-based firewall to having all your next-gen security elements built into the cloud. And there's a lot of secure web gateway, firewall as a service capabilities in multi-vendor environments that we're solving and managing kind of end-to-end in these type of architectures right now. And I think where we're excited, where we're really going is, thinking about what VMware is going to do to converge those all in a VMware specific integrated offer. So, think about AT&T and what we do from a managed services perspective. This is kind of, where we've built throughout that 5-year plus relationship with VMware, some deep levels of learnings of how do we provide, deeper levels of increased management and value back to our customers. And a couple of the changes that we've made throughout that 5-year journey is we've added additional resources. We refer to those as our kind of expert engineers to do a low-level design before we really start the heavy deployment process. And that's been critical in catching a lot of the fatal flaws and requirement gaps that we could have potentially missed without that deep understanding of both the VMware technology, but also going through hundreds of, complex enterprise deployments with other customers, knowing the pitfalls and knowing, other customer environment requirements that we're catching in that early stage. So that's been a critical addition, and it's really helped us ensure that we can execute the real complex aspect of this conversion from networking to, this next-gen network architecture. So a lot of value in that aspect, providing kind of that global service delivery wrapper with additional project management. And then the day 2 support component is also really important. So we've evolved our day 2 support from not just managing the SD-WAN device, very important, a lot of expertise there too, but also integrating it with additional management capabilities in proactively monitoring the AT&T network and even third-party networks. And if there's an issue, owning the resolution, the trouble ticketing, the escalations, the remediation on both AT&T and third-party networks, so the customer doesn't have to worry about that. And as you add more and more carriers to your environment from a transport perspective, that complexity kind of compounds. And when you do that on a global scale, having that single point that really own resolution of the underlay and the overlay is becoming extremely valuable. And as I mentioned, as we think about the morphing of security into this, now that integrated service experience now becomes that single point where we're looking at investing and developing the management into the managed security aspect too. So it's a single resource that can really provide that robust single point of contact, whether it's cloud security issues or MACDs, whether it's broader, network underlay issues or device and configuration issues on the SD-WAN technology itself. So become kind of a core foundational element to AT&T's value. So to kind of sum it up, when you think about, I talked about a number of different aspects to, our managed capabilities and how we differentiate and do that. The solution design is kind of the foundational element. The expert engineers providing that deep understanding of VMware's aspect, knowing the pitfalls and how to navigate those through a lot of complex deployments, building that kind of blueprint. But also, we've got the expertise behind those expert engineers. So the tier 2, the tier 3, the tier 4 in our labs organization, if there's a software issue on a new release of that version, we've got that deep expertise that's done vetting of it already. We've documented that vetting so we can quickly resolve and address that on our customers' behalf. And that's some of the key lessons learned that we've done throughout kind of 5 years of working with software-defined networking and working with SD-WAN type of technology. Software are going to have issues, and you've got to have resources that know it and can remediate and have the deep relationships with the right vendors to troubleshoot and address those issues. The global implementation aspect of this is another one I kind of mentioned where, we've been in deploying managed devices on networks for 20 plus years. So traditional routers that we do, and we still support in 200 plus countries. So that distribution model, the depoting model, the feet on the street to deploy and turn those up and manage those, that's kind of core in our DNA. So now just doing that with SD-WAN being the next generation of that networking is something that we've got that model built out. It's very easy for us to continue to do that and do it on a global scale. So that's a critical element. And then you think about back to the integrated aspect of all these technologies. So it's not just the underlay network that you're transforming with SD-WAN. In a lot of cases, you're evaluating your security architecture. You're going to make transformation in that aspect. So leveraging our managed security expertise, thinking of it holistically end to end. That's the core value that we're bringing, not only from the design, the certification, the testing, but also the delivery of that and the data support, integrating that in with our integrated service experience. And as I mentioned, there's other transformation aspects on the LAN side that are happening with voice and UC transformation that's happening. So a lot of those play really well into additional layers. And a lot of times enterprise businesses may kind of stage some of these transformation journeys out. They're not going to do everything at once. They're going to prioritize what's more important first. But having a provider like AT&T that can really do it end to end and can take the complexity out of that multi-vendor end-to-end journey, and can take full accountability of resolving issues when they do happen between this broad set of technologies is really the important aspect that our customers turn to and rely on. So I want to kind of focus on a couple of use cases, and I think it's always fun. You talk hypothetical technology stuff, but applying it to where we've really seen a couple of our customers use these technologies, use them in real world settings, I think is always important to kind of ground it on. So a fashion jewelry retailer that across 110 retail stores really was having some challenges with the rapid deployment of connectivity into their stores and overall reliability of that connectivity, driving productivity challenges with their stores. And as they started to move back to kind of that cloud transformation, more applications to the cloud, they needed more bandwidth in those stores for more video and higher bandwidth applications that they wanted to deploy. But their cost requirements were really constrained, right? Retail is a highly competitive space, so it needs to be price sensitive. So we looked at this, and it was a perfect opportunity to start to converge back to kind of SD-WAN and mobility, right? So using no longer constrained by broadband or dedicated internet in like mall environments, for example, where I've got to cross connect those into either that storefront or a kiosk that are really challenging to do and complex to do. So wireless being a tremendous alternative that we can integrate with SD-WAN, the stage configure, activate that SIM, link the proper data plan to it, deploy it out, and turn it up within days versus it waiting weeks or months for that additional dedicated internet. So this worked extremely well, got their stores up and running. The other aspect that they really loved is as the dedicated internet came in there, now they could drive better utilization across both those links. They could deploy more applications such as video. Like I said, digital signage was another big focal point for them. So now they have got the architecture, the capacity to really scale to where their business was really looking to go. So it drove a lot of efficiencies. It provided a much more rapid deployment using both wireless and wireline access technologies fully integrated into that SD-WAN environment. The next is a little similar, but in some ways quite different. So also global retailer, but in this one, they also are focused on manufacturing of their goods. So you're thinking about that environment, you've got manufacturing facilities, you've got retail sites, you've got corporate sites that you're having to accommodate, each having different unique requirements, each having to solution and size a little differently based on those requirements. And then you're thinking about that over 1,000 locations from corporate manufacturing to retail sites across 70 different countries. So that adds a lot of complexity, is a great opportunity to really leverage kind of the full array of assets of AT&T to kind of help solution and size this. So looking at a variety of different access technologies, going from traditional MPLS to different forms of dedicated internet with broadband was the primary mix of access that we used for their site typing, gave them a lot more agility in that architecture, helped reduce some of the overall network costs, gave them a lot more throughput. And it also allowed them to really start thinking about their long-term architecture. So instead of tunneling all their cloud applications back through their security stack in their data center, we looked at transforming that with Zscaler and their cloud web security aspects. So that gives them kind of that secure internet offload and ability to really use both kind of corporate data center applications into their traditional environment, but also for those SaaS and cloud applications, they can directly offload and use the different mixtures of access technologies to drive that full value in this type of solution. So great architecture, used a lot of different mixes of technologies, and it showcased kind of our ability to do this on a global scale and use in-country resources and know the nuances of how to do this throughout 70 plus countries. So hopefully from this conversation and this discussion, you found some great value in some of the content that I shared. Hopefully it's educated you on some of the broader transformation journeys, not only that AT&T is doing, but what we're working on with VMware. Long partnership, a lot of innovation happening between our two companies, and really excited for what we're developing next in this space. So hopefully if there's any other questions, you take a moment to fill out the survey. And if there's anything AT&T can do, definitely reach out to your AT&T sales partners, and we're happy to assist you. So enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you for your time.